address that at the latter part
Sure.
of the discussion.
Sure.
So just to focus on some of the other issues that you were discussing, like the skills shortage.
Certainly, certainly. The other thing that I could mention is that there is also a study done by 3 academics at Moroto University, De Silva, Rajakaruna and Bandara, from the Building Economics Department. They identified some of these issues, and they found that another issue is a lag in the adoption of technology. That is, the local construction industry isn't taking on technology, the same issue again, so fast enough. There isn't enough transfer going on. They're also not adopting IT and systems in their business practices sufficiently.
So
that's another issue.
Is there a way of getting the best practices, looking at other countries, like you mentioned several universities where you were also engaged in? So how can, say, Sri Lanka look at the best practices of other countries and get it to Sri Lanka back?
Our universities are pretty close to world class, if they're not world class. I mean, Moroto, Peradeniya, Ruhuna, amazingly good engineering faculties. So it's not that we have a lack at that level. But construction industry workforce is not just engineers, university graduates, it's also all the other levels, the technical officers, the supervisors, the tradespeople, and so on. So we need technology transfer and knowledge right through the workforce.
Again, that's a very important point that you
Yes.
said. It's not only university graduate, but at the technical level you
Yes,
need to enhance
indeed.
their skills.
Indeed.
So I guess where you are coming in as a construction management specialist is also enhancing skills.
Indeed.
So before going to that, Satis, I was also wondering, you were also pointing out as an issue that there is government regulations
Indeed.
that has to come into place.
Indeed.
What was the issue about?
Well, there is an ICTAD, Institute for Construction and Training Development, which is trying to do some of these things. But I don't think that's going to be sufficient. So the government agencies concerned, the ministries, have been developing a new act on this issue. And the act is yet to have its passage through Parliament.
What is this act about?
It's about the regulation. I think it's called something like to provide the overall development of the construction industry of Sri Lanka. That's the name of the act. The act is virtually ready, but because of the recent elections, it could not get through Parliament. So we have to wait for the new Parliament before it can hopefully have passage and become law.
So is this act in any way going to address the quality control issues? Like, for example, Satis, like one main criticism that we always encounter, we see in the newspapers, that there is construction sometimes going on, the bridge is being built, but sometimes it's reported to have cracks and collapsing. I mean, I'm not talking about any specific instance, but these are things that time and again you hear. For example, even after tsunami, there was a lot of construction when it comes to houses, but then later on it was found that there were cracks in the houses and the structures were not sound. One example that comes to mind a couple of years back was the Kotmale Dam, where there was a crack and then actually there were economic consequences because of that. So this sort of not sound structures coming up, what is the remedy for this, and actually who is accountable in the area of construction?
We're going back to the whole regulatory process that I talked about through the new act, and the answer is yes, indeed. When that act is law and there is possibility for setting up new agencies under the act and regulation of based on that act, then the whole quality issue can be much better managed. Indeed, no question. But at the same time, I don't think, you always tend to hear in the news the bad news. For every bad job that we may get reported, there may be 10 or 20 or even 100 really good jobs that are going on nobody talks about. So if you do a job perfectly and it's working, then nobody talks about that. So there is still a lot of very good construction going on, and some top-class companies here, top-class engineers, architects, quantity surveyors, and every level. But we have to still make sure that it's better than it is. Safety is another issue. I think we need to be really concerned about construction site safety, and the two surveys that I mentioned, the De Silva Rajakaruna Bandara survey, found safe to be a really big issue as well. Yeah. And from my personal experience, I can tell you, I know of cases of safety that has not been properly addressed. Yeah.
Because I guess at the end of the day, like as you said, there is so much good news that's happening that is not sometimes even reported, but those bad incidents, a couple of collapsing and cracks and all that, that can also cost so much.
Indeed.
So those can serve as indicators for us to develop our policy regarding quality assurance and so on. So at the same time, what is happening with respect to safety? Because I guess the contractors, if you look at the contractors, they also have to be honest by the common man, right? And if they are undertaking a contract, safety is a huge issue. I mean, if they have retention funds because the project is not if it is not done properly, they might be able to get something back from the contractor. But of course, if there was damage done in the process and safety was at stake, that cannot be sort of compensated for. So what are the mechanisms that will be adopted in the field?
It all to some extent comes back to money. I mean, if the margins are low and if the bidding process is allowing really unrealistically low bids to be the successful tenderers, then you are starting with a problem even before you start, because you're going to have companies that are trying to keep to impossibly low budgets, and things like safety become less focused. And so safety and poor construction that you mentioned earlier can also arise if the budgets are unrealistically low, if the bids are too low. So a healthy industry is one where everyone recognizes that the job must be done for a fair and balanced price, not the very lowest price that is crazily 20-30% below a fair price. You just cannot work like that, and companies will simply not survive, and the quality of the work will not be good long term.
So what you're saying is, if the competition is so much just to get an unfair advantage, the agreements can be agreed at very low cost, but that will lead into getting substandard material and result in unsound structures.
Exactly, and it won't be really an economy. It will be a false economy for the client. Just because you got a very low bid, it doesn't mean you're going to get a good product in the end.
So that means that these are the main issues that are indeed. Like, and the thing is, this act that you said that is supposed to be passed will address some of these measures.
Yes, indeed. I mean, it's been worked through by all of the key players, the key intellects, the key professionals, and a lot of work over a long time has gone into this act. So we can all hope that in the new parliament it will see passage, and the relevant new authorities will be set up, and the new processes will all come into play.
And also about skills shortage you mentioned, and were you specifically referring to the skills shortage at the technical levels?
Yes, I think there are skills shortages in the construction industry at all levels. Part of the problem might have been that 10 years ago, when things were a bit tougher, we were still in the middle of a civil conflict in the country, and work could not proceed on a regular and a sustained basis. The construction workforce may have been discouraged. Some of them would have lost work, and they may have, if they could, migrated to other countries. So there is a vast skilled Sri Lankan workforce in the diaspora in all the countries of the world, but particularly the English-speaking world, as you know. And I mean, sadly, I'm one of them too. I'm in Australia. But there are so many Sri Lankan technically qualified people who are now all around the world. So that's one of the skills issues itself. But at the technical level, there is a need. There are some excellent institutions that are producing graduates. But once again, they don't all stay here unless they get satisfying employment. So young people are looking for career paths. Everybody's wanting and has a right to improvement. So career paths are really important for all levels. So if you start with a certificate, you want to get to a diploma level. If you have a diploma level, you would like to get to a graduate level. If not becoming a graduate, you would like to get the equivalent of a corporate engineer. And there are pathways through which you could go from one to the other. And these are quite important for young people, and in designing courses, designing qualifications, frameworks, we have to think about the aspirations of young people.
So is that what you're engaged in now when you
Indeed.
said like
Indeed.
construction management
Indeed.
specialist?
Yeah.
So in your current work, I think it's with the SLIET, right?
Yeah,
so
they're the client, yes.
yeah, so how did you try to address some of these issues we just discussed? How